Monster Hunter Rise came out March 26th on the Nintendo Switch, and I wanted to share some of my thoughts after making it through a majority of the main content in the game. Before Rise, my only experience with Monster Hunter was with World and Iceborne, so I thought it'd be nice just to share some of my perspective as a player coming from those two games specifically. There are going to be some spoilers in this video, so keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and start with gameplay and mechanics, since to me that's the most important part of a game, and really is the shining factor in Rise. The core gameplay mechanic that Capcom has introduced in Rise is the wire bug, and it truly is at the heart of the game. They're small insects that are with your hunter during every hunt, and they allow your hunter to do a variety of skills like wire dash, wall run, wire fall, and perform silkbind attacks. Different actions are going to cost your hunter different values in the wire bug gauge, which is at the bottom of your screen. You can find additional wire bugs on the map, but you'll always cap out at 3. All of these things between the wire bug skills really helps to speed up the gameplay and kind of fill what feels like dead air in between combat. In World, there were a lot of times where I found myself just running around a monster, trying to decide what to do next while it like flails around. But in Rise, I can just use a wire bug action to keep myself engaged and really feel like I'm controlling the environment around the monster I'm hunting. It really just gives me more options all around. Switch skills are the other thing that was added to Rise, and I might actually like this more than wire bugs because it feels like you can really change your gameplay. So switch skills are abilities that you can swap your normal combo skills with to change how your gameplay works. Since I'm an insect glaive main myself, I'm going to be using that as an example to showcase what they are. Let's start by looking at non-switch skills, which are Leaping Slash and Tornado Slash. These two abilities are the common skill openers and have been with Insect Glaive since it's been in Monster Hunter. The Silkbind skill you get is Silkbind Vault, or your Recall Kinsect, and what it does is it kind of just adds some extra mobility on top of what you already have. Now let's go ahead and swap these skills to their switch skill versions, which is Advancing Round Slash, Tetraseel Slash, and Diving Wyvern. So forward round slash is going to have your hunter take a stance and then dash forward quickly, spinning and hitting anything on its way until it hits the final slash, while Tetraseel Slash will be a 4-hit combo that applies Kinsect Powder at the very end. Diving Wyvern replaces Recall Kinsect. It is a small area but heavy damage skill that causes your hunter to go up down, or if you're already in the air to come down and hit a target. These skills all function very differently from their original skills, and can really change how you play your weapon, especially for Insect Glaive. Now, every single weapon has 3 different switch skills that you can change and choose from. You unlock these skills by completing story missions and different tasks for different NPCs within the main hub of the game. Palicos have received some changes in Rise, and Palamutes are a brand new companion that has joined your team. In World, you had the ability to ride certain monsters. This was an addition that was added in Iceborne, and Palamutes serve to fulfill that function. During expeditions or during fights, you can ride your Palamute, allowing you to get around the map much quicker, even faster than you would wire bugging around. And Palicos basically do the same thing as they did in World, with the biggest changes being able to change the behavior of how they fight. This applies both to Palicos and Palamutes. You can change what they attack, how often they attack. Palamutes, you can change the way they attack, whether it be pincer or normal. These changes are a very big deal, as before they were kind of just there during hunts. You had the different gadgets that you would put on a Palico and just hope for the best as they would fight. Hopefully they'd put down a trap, or like a shock trap, or a healing bubble, or revive you. In Rise, it feels like they have way more control during the fights and actually do something, and are much more impactful overall. Another pretty major thing that has been added in Rise is Wyvern riding. And what this is the ability to ride on a monster similar to how it was in World and Iceborne, but with a few more functions tacked on. What it does is when a monster takes enough aerial damage, or the blue damage numbers, or it is damaged by another monster that might be on the map, it will enter a state where your hunter can attack or simply press A to Wyvern ride it, and you'll get access to different functions like an emergency evade, a light attack, a strong attack, that are actual parts of the monster's moveset. What this does is when you hit another monster with this, you'll deal damage to the monster, a lot of damage, and you'll also flinch them and cause them to drop a piece of their material. Alternatively, you can knock the monster into a wall. You can do this up to 3 times, I believe, but it might depend on how many wire bugs you have, and you might be able to knock them back and forth a bit more. Overall, I think this is a cool mechanic, but I kind of feel like it might be a bit overpowered. I find myself abusing this a lot, especially through the story as I was progressing, because it's just such a strong tool, and it really makes the monsters feel a bit like just extra tools that you have, rather than in World. I felt like if there were any other monsters on the map while I was hunting a monster, that they were also a threat. They might come and intervene in my hunt and bother me and be a problem, whereas in here it's like, oh, a monster's here, that's some free damage on this one, okay, I'm done with you, goodbye. Another new thing that Monster Hunter Rise has added is rampages, and what these are tower defense like modes where you will set up different turrets and traps and spawn heroes to defend a main objective, which is the Kamara Gate. Your hunter will be running through it. You can do this multiplayer with up to 4 people, and hordes of monsters will come, and you'll have to deal with them to prevent them from taking down the gate. Eventually they'll lead to a boss of each wave, and they'll progressively get stronger. As you go through a rampage, something called a counter signal can be fired, where your hunter's damage will be immensely boosted, and you just want to get off turrets, get off defenses, and just go on the offense with your actual weapon and just deal some damage to bosses. Now, rampages in concept are not bad, and with some friends they can be a ton of fun and very quick and just a satisfying thing to get through. But with randoms that do not know what they're doing, this mode can be a huge issue. There were a lot of times where I was like, okay, I'll try and do a rampage with some randoms, and I just found myself getting bored and frustrated because it either took too long, or people were just felt like they were trolling and just putting up random turrets and walking around and not doing what the tutorial rampage shows you to do. For example, sometimes a Counter-Strike flare would be fired and people would sit on cannons. This is definitely not what you should do. When a flare is fired, you should go with your weapon and fight. But this was not the case sometimes. Sometimes people really just want to turtle on a turret and just keep firing. Other times, at the start of each wave, you need to ready up so that the wave can actually start. And there are times where people will literally just sit there running around in place or just doing random stuff, or maybe they're even AFK, and the wave just takes so long to start, and the entire rampage just feels like it takes so long. So I think that this mode is good, but you should really either try and solo it, which, might actually make it harder, or do it with some friends, then you'll have the best experience that you can have. Aside from these things, I feel like the gameplay in Rise has not changed too much, and that's definitely a good thing. Monster Hunter definitely has its combat down, the formula is perfect. You're really encouraged to try out other weapons as you play. I feel like that's the whole point of Monster Hunter. You find your weapon that you really enjoy, that you main. For me, it's Insect Glaive, but I also want to try out these other weapons that my friends are using, Hammer, Switch Axe, Charge Blade, Dual Blade, because it just looks so cool and it gives me another thing to farm for, a new set of armor, a new set of charms or talismans, so on and so forth. I want to move on to story next, and if you don't want to get spoiled by anything and want to experience the story for yourself, go ahead and skip to this time where I'll be done talking about it. Okay, so in World, I did not know what I expected going in because I'd never played a Monster Hunter before, and I was kind of excited to see what the story was, and it really grabbed me at first. But I noticed a pattern, especially in World and Iceborne, is that Monster Hunter stories tend to follow the same kind of formula, where you're the hunter, you're slowly progressing, dealing with monsters that are some kind of threat to the ecosystem. There's one big bad monster who's a top threat above everything else. You take him down just to find out that there's some elder dragon who's causing some kind of mischief and mayhem in the area, and then there might be something even bigger than that on top of it all. That was definitely the case in World and Iceborne, and Rise kind of followed the same formula. In Rise, you are the hunter, the only hunter in the village, the one that's relevant now at the very least, and you're taking on monsters, clearing out areas, things that might disturb the ecosystem. You move on to the flagship monster, Magnamalo. You fight him, you find out there's some kind of other disturbance going on, you fight them, there's another disturbance on top of that, you fight that, and then the game story ends on a cliffhanger. So I wasn't too shocked by it, and I also wasn't too impressed by it, but I wasn't disappointed. I think it was interesting overall, and the monster variety and fights, especially the new ones, really helped to temper my expectations a bit. I really thought that the monsters in Rise were extremely creative, especially coming from World. Not to say that the ones in World were not creative, especially because there's a lot of monsters from World and other monster hunters in this one. It was just really fun to fight some of the monsters in Rise. Also, I just want to say that final boss, absolutely amazing. Now I want to talk briefly about setting, because I think setting is something that's really important to a game like Monster Hunter. In World, we had our different regions. We had the hub area, the Fivers area where all the ship was. In Rise, you have your main hub, which is Kamara Village. There's a lot of subsections that are split up in Kamara Village. And then you have your 5 main maps: the Shrine Ruins, the Flooded Forest, the Frost Islands, Sandy Plains, and the Lava Caverns. And these places really surprised me because I did not expect a lot of these areas to be the same size, or some of them feel like they're bigger than some of the places in World and Iceborne. So this really shocked me in a good way. But there are some places where I think that they're not exactly designed in a way that I would like. Specifically the Sandy Plains and Lava Caverns. These 2 maps have 2 sections, basically an upper area and then an underground lower area. And the first couple times that I was in these areas doing missions, I would get frustrated so often because I would get completely lost. I had no idea like how I ended up in the bottom, and I had even less of an idea of how to get back up. So this was definitely a frustration factor doing the story, and even sometimes now, it's just sometimes I just get completely lost and I'm like, okay, where am I? How did I get here? How do I get out? Because it feels like there's a million paths that can get me out, but when I go through them, I just end up back where I was. Despite this, I do think that the maps are really well made. I really enjoyed going through them the first time. I still enjoy going through them. The way that the monsters move around them, the way the maps themselves look, the way that the endemic life looks and is placed is all very satisfying and really fun just to go through during your hunt and just admire the area. So I think they really did hit the nail on the head for a lot of these places. One of the biggest things that Monster Hunter Rise has going for it is that it's a constantly updated game. Capcom is going to continue releasing updates, monsters, areas, quests, events that are going to help reinforce the game and really help to make it flourish and grow the same way that they give so much love to World and Iceborne. And I think that's something that needs to be kept in mind when thinking about Rise, because you're not just buying Monster Hunter Rise as it is now. You're paying for the future updates, the future monsters, because they always, at least so far, give those out for free. So you're really getting so much content for $60. Now, as much as I want to talk about some of the monsters that are in the game right now, I'm actually going to hold off on this because I think it's much more satisfying and more enjoyable to actually play the game yourself and see each of the monsters, how they appear, and the different type of intros that they get. Because each monster does have a different role in the Monster Hunter world. A lot of them are from other games, some of them are new, and it just helps to build that kind of relationship with the game and that little feeling of giddy that you get watching a new monster get introduced, seeing it for the first time and saying, oh my goodness, that thing looks so cool, but it's so dangerous. I need to learn its moveset, I need to know how to dodge it. Now you learn how to dodge all the moves. It's so satisfying, things like that. So I'm going to hold off from talking too much about that. Just know that there are a lot of monsters in the game that have been in other Monster Hunter games. They do make their return. Some of their movesets are different, but for the most part, they're the same. Same thing with their themes. They're mostly all the same. And I think that's it. I talked about some of the gameplay mechanic changes, some of the things that Rise brought that World and other Monster Hunters didn't have, some of the different monsters, why I don't want to talk about them, the rampages, the settings, the fact that we're going to keep getting content. At the end of the day, I will say that I've really enjoyed my time playing Rise. Almost as much, if not more, than I did playing World for the first time. Because like World, I know I went in for the first time and it was just so exciting. But Rise, it felt so familiar to come back and play Insect Glaive with my friends, fight some of these monsters that I've already fought. It just felt so familiar. And that's just after playing one Monster Hunter game. I guess you could maybe count Iceborne as another, but really one. So if you're familiar with Monster Hunter already, I think Rise is a must buy, but you probably already knew this. Rise truly is just such a great game. Everything works so well together. The gameplay, the story, although it is a little bit thin, it's still really good, really enjoyable. The monsters are amazing, the music is amazing, the setting is amazing. Everything just works so well together. and I'm so excited. I have such high hopes for this game because I know there's still more to come, just like how I knew there was more to come for World. And I feel like I don't want to give her like a rating to the game because it's a little bit unfair when there's still so much that can come out. But if I had to give it a rating right now, out of a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the best and 1 being the worst, I would give Rise a solid 9 out of 10. There are very few things that make me want to say, there's a little bit of issues here and there. But these are things that can be updated, and with the amount of content we're going to get, it's like it can only get better from here. They'd have to do something crazy to make it get worse. So that's really all I have to say about Rise. I mean, just go out, pick it up, enjoy it. Let me know what you think as well, if you have different opinions or if you think the same thing. I am just looking forward to playing more Rise at the end of the day. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.